For years we've been told that there's no two-tier justice, that's a far-right conspiracy theory. Well, like just about every other far-right conspiracy theory, it's been proven to be completely correct. In the past week, we've seen the release of two people from either side of the divide. Lucy Connolly, a mother who was sentenced to 31 months in jail for tweeting some naughty words, and Ricky Jones, a politician from Britain's ruling far-left Labour Party, who was sentenced to 0 months in jail despite being filmed urging a mob of lefty activists to slit the throats of right-wing people. This was in the aftermath of the Southport attack, when British girls were slaughtered by Axel Muganwa Rudakabana, who I'm reliably informed is the Welshiest Welshman who ever Welshed. Don't you think a politician would want to use his moment in the spotlight at that point to sympathise with the slaughtered girls, or to condemn the anti-white racism that many believe motivated Axel Rudakabana? Do you think he called for calm or for understanding that some people don't like it when British girls are killed by genocidal Rwandans? No, he decided to call for more white people to be killed in the same manner as those girls. Take a look at the video.
They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cull their throats and get rid of them all.
No two-tier justice. He wasn't convicted for this. Here he is leaving court after being found not guilty, dressed like Michael Jackson for some reason. Imagine the reaction if this was said at a Tommy Robinson rally. But the verdict is only a tiny part of it. Ricky was bailed to return home to wait for his trial. Lucy Connolly wasn't. Ricky got no time, she got 31 months. She wasn't even allowed compassionate visits with her young daughter. In a moment, I'll dig into the differences between how Ricky was treated and how people on the right were treated for crimes like posting on social media or farting near a police horse. But first, let's look at Ricky's amazing defence that convinced the jury he was innocent. His lawyers played the mental health card, saying he's probably got ADHD, like he's Greg Wallace trying to explain why he goosed someone's arse at the BBC Christmas party. His defence also said he suffered from emotional arousal, which could override deliberate decision making, which to be honest sounds like a good reason to lock him up. Medical experts testified that Jones faces neurodivergent challenges like impulsivity and slower verbal processing, which is fancy words for saying he's stupid, he's dumb as a rock. I mean, yeah, obviously he's stupid. He's a Labour politician. If he wasn't stupid, he'd be right-wing. His defence then played the race card, of course, saying he was racially abused at school. He recalls he had to do gym class in his underpants and says he would find spit on his clothes when he returned to the changing room. Was this racist bullying though, or were his classmates just judging him on the content of his character? Anyway, it's all very tear-jerking to learn that this 58-year-old had to do gym class in his underpants at school, but what's he got to do with calling for people's throats to be slit now? Save it for Oprah, Ricky. And Ricky insisted in court that he's appalled by political violence, despite pretty unambiguously calling for a mob of riled-up socialists to commit political violence. He said that when people rioted because kids had been killed, the riots made him feel bad. What about the kids being killed? I've never heard a single lefty say that they're actually angry that these girls were killed or want to do anything to stop it happening again. Instead, they accuse anyone who's angry about the girls being killed of being motivated only by racism, as if all the rioters were all like, oh, thank God some children have been killed, so I've got an excuse to be racist. That's insane. In comparison to Ricky, let's see how somebody on the other side, Lucy Connolly, was treated. She tweeted this: mass deportation now, set fire to all the effing hotels full of the B words for all I care. If this makes me racist, so be it. I mean, if anything, it's increasingly looking like a list of activities for people who want to stop civil war happening in their own country, but people said it's the most inciting incitement that ever incited, and Lucy is directly responsible for any and all violence ever, even though there was no direct and specific call for violence, and it had the qualifier for all I care, showing that Lucy wasn't directing people to set fire to hotels, she's just showing indifference if it happens. And if Ricky Jones being made to play netball in his Y-fronts when he was 12 is mitigating circumstances for his crime, well, Lucy's toddler a few years ago sadly died due to the medical negligence of an immigrant doctor. You can surely understand that someone who's lost a child in those circumstances might see a downside to relentless mass immigration and be a bit triggered by children being stabbed to death by a Rwandan. And what weight did Lucy's tweet actually carry? She had 9,000 followers, as if people were sitting around doing nothing until a Midlands childminder gave the signal and they all suddenly decided, you know what? This young mum who's had half a bottle of wine is right. Importing thousands of young men from violent misogynistic cultures and sticking them in hotels next to our schools is bad. I shall riot because of her tweet. No, people were rioting because their concerns around this have been ignored for decades. And lots of people on the left, even top barristers like Anna Soubry, say, ooh, but she pleaded guilty so justice was served. Yeah, but this is the point. She was railroaded into pleading guilty. Southport rioters and tweeters were denied bail and fast-tracked so they didn't have time to organise representation or to build a defence. And Lucy was told that if she pleaded not guilty, she'd be held in jail and denied bail until her trial, which could be a year away. So she should plead guilty and get released with a slap on the wrist and a suspended sentence and be home for Christmas. But when Lucy pleaded guilty in the expectation of being allowed home, the judge slapped her with 31 months in jail. Compare that with Ricky Jones, who was treated with kid gloves, advised to plead not guilty and bailed to return home. Lucy pleading guilty is more evidence of two-tier treatment, not a denial of it. Lucy's treatment was clearly her being made an example, a head on a bayonet on the castle ramparts, warning anyone else who might think of tweeting that we can get you. Unlike Ricky Jones, Lucy didn't have the resources to arrange her own solicitor, so she depended on the state-provided duty solicitor. These solicitors, even though they're provided by the state, are still supposed to be independent and advocate for their client's best interests. But did Lucy's? Was there collusion between the Southport rioters' solicitors and the state, or did their solicitors just give them terrible advice? When Lucy appealed unsuccessfully against her 31-month sentence, her lawyer was praised by the judge. Lord Justice Holroyd said, "He struck us as a conscientious defence lawyer with a clear grasp of the relevant law, practice and procedure and a realistic appraisal of the issues in the case." But while Lucy's solicitor might have done a great job for the judge, he objectively did a terrible job for her, as his advice to plead guilty got her banged up for years. And for all the people who say, oh, well, she pleaded guilty, well, look what happens when lefties plead guilty. Labour MP Mike Amesbury was caught on camera drunkenly and repeatedly attacking one of his constituents and pleaded guilty and was at first given 10 weeks jail, but was freed by the judge after serving just 3 days, even though Mr. Amesbury was criticised by the judge for telling police a pack of lies about the assault. Just 3 days for a brutal real-life assault, while Lucy Connolly was sentenced to almost 1,000 days for a tweet. I mean, at least Mike Amesbury faced some sort of justice. Nick Lowell's the weaselly little fat skinny gimp who runs far-left activist group Hope Not Hate took time out from chewing cables behind a fridge to post a dangerous false rumour during the Southport riots that Muslim women were being targeted with acid attacks by supposedly far-right rioters, and he left his tweet up even when it had been denied by police. As a trusted government advisor, his tweet carried far more credibility than Lucy Connolly's or other people arrested and jailed for spreading misinformation, but no action was taken by the police over his incredibly dangerous false tweet. Hope Not Hate also spread a hoax about supposed far-right rallies in the wake of the Southport killings, and then they admitted they considered it worthwhile to spread the hoax as it got them publicity, and the fundraising they did off the back of the situation must have helped them as well. People say, ooh, but the judiciary isn't controlled by the government, it's independent. I mean, that is actually more worrying, because it's clearly not independent. Our courts are stuffed with activist judges who don't even try to hide their bias. They let illegal migrants who committed horrendous crimes in this country to stay in this country for laughable reasons, like they can't get their preferred brand of chicken nuggets in Albania, or they'll be persecuted for being a paedophile in Zimbabwe. You're supposed to be persecuted if you're a paedophile. This means the long march through the institutions has left the supposedly independent judiciary totally aligned with the government, and this alignment was shown starkly when Lucy's judge said, "It is a strength of our society that it is both diverse and inclusive." I mean, these aren't dry empirical truths, these are religious beliefs. The judge is a member of the same religion of progressive wokeism as everyone else on the left. There's no scientific evidence that diversity is a strength. In fact, all the data available shows that diversity is not a strength. It's led to conflict and mass slaughter everywhere from the Balkans to Lebanon to Rwanda. Conflict caused by diversity is ironically almost certainly why Axel Rudikabana's family fled Rwanda in the first place. But there's evidence that this lack of independence goes further than ideological alignment. Look how Starmer requested fast-track prosecutions, and the CPS appeared to change its approach for the prosecutions of people like Lucy Connolly. Normally, such cases would be tried under the Malicious Communications Communications Act or the Communications Act, which have much lighter maximum sentences. But Lucy and others were tried under the Public Order Act, which is a maximum sentence of 7 years. How much influence did Keir Starmer and the Attorney General have over this? Was there any collusion with supposedly independent duty solicitors or the judiciary? Even if there's no evidence of direct collusion, is the criminal justice system aligned with far-left leaders as part of the blob? We're sliding into a Chinese-style total government, but at least in China, they use it to give Chinese citizens preeminence instead of to crush their own people. Speaking of crushing our own people, let's look at some other Southport protesters. Jamie Michael is a British Army veteran who posted a video on Facebook criticising left-wing politicians for allowing illegal immigration and not keeping British children safe. He also expressed concern about Islamic extremism and radicalised idiots. Jamie was reported to the police by Labour politician Buffy Williams. So a politician directed the police to crush a political dissident who had criticised her. How is this different to China? Except we've got drag queens in schools and an economy based on vape shops and payday lending. Thankfully, Jamie had the foresight to get his own lawyer instead of relying on the state-appointed solicitor, and he was advised to plead not guilty and cleared by a jury in just 17 minutes. Unlike Lee Joseph Dunn, a 51-year-old resident of Cumbria who was prosecuted for racially aggravated social media messages after he shared 3 images on Facebook. One image showed men wielding knives in front of Britain's Parliament with a crying white child in a Union flag t-shirt captioned, "Coming to a town near you." Another depicted men disembarking from a boat onto Whitehaven Beach with the caption, "When it's on your turf, then what?" I mean, really, some guys getting off a boat is racial hatred. Honestly, these supposedly racist images are so tame, they'd get you kicked out of most WhatsApp groups for not being racist enough. And the images are based in fact. Under Labour's Operation Scatter, which sends small boat migrants to towns around the country, you might have noticed these images pretty accurately represent official government policy. And if anything, the picture of Islamists with knives in front of Parliament downplays the severity of the situation. Never mind knives being waved, there have been Islamist terror attacks at Westminster that have killed people, and David Amess, a Conservative MP from that very Parliament, was killed with a knife by Islamist Ali Harbi Ali. You'd think politicians might side with the people who don't want them to get stabbed instead of locking them up. Despite the tameness of these images, Dunn was advised to plead guilty and he was sentenced to 8 weeks in prison. And Julie Sweeney, a 53-year-old woman from Cheshire, was jailed after posting on Facebook, "Blow the mosque up," which is a terrible offence as it might destroy the weapons cache that police had advised them to hide in the mosque.
If there's any reference or anything like that, what I will do is discard them in the mosque. Leave them here. And you don't give anybody any reason or have any interaction with the police, negative interaction. That's my belief. So if there's any reference, get rid of them.
And Peter Lynch was jailed for being part of a mob outside a migrant hotel in Rotherham, calling police scum and shouting, "You are protecting people who are killing our kids and raping them." Lynch was seen holding a placard at the riot, accusing institutions of corruption.
How do we go by our rights and bring our children up if there's a corrupt system all the way through? Police, judicial services, everything, it's all involved. Parliament, MPs, everything, they're all corrupt. We get Prime Ministers corrupt. So how can we tell our children to bring them up straight and narrow when everybody above them was corrupt?
I mean, it's not very nice, but is it incorrect? He did this in Rotherham, where the police have been widely criticised for looking the other way while grooming gangs operated for decades. And many victims have come forward to accuse this Rotherham police officer of actually being in the grooming gang himself and raping children. As for the corruption, I think we're watching that unfold in real time. Despite pleading guilty and not physically attacking anyone, Peter Lynch was jailed for nearly 3 years. And there's an extra punishment for the Southport protesters. British jails are now run by Islamists. Any British patriot in jail with these people has a target on their back, as this Sky journalist acknowledged.
And if they do end up in prison, somebody who knows about these things told me that, any right-wing, far-right protester landing up in jail, they can expect a pretty cold reception from what he says are Asian gangs inside prison who will be looking out for them.
And sadly, jail seemed too much of a punishment for Peter Lynch, who died while he was inside. But the left are still denying that there's two-tier justice. Solicitor Peter Stringfellow, blimey, he's had a career change, said, "Both Jones and Connolly said pretty unpleasant things. However, I'm afraid the conflation of the two after that is a problem. It comes from people who've got some sort of political agenda, in my view. They were facing completely different allegations, and a massive part of those different allegations is the racial element. If you look at the Connolly case, her intention is of a racial nature." So, he says her crime is worse because it has a racial element. Why is being racist seen as worse than killing people? As you might expect from the ideologues of the left, ideas are far more important to them than reality. That's why the police turn up to hate crimes and misgendering, but not to people who get $2,000 worth of camera gear nicked from their car. Yes, I am still bitter. But while we're on the subject of racial bias, Ricky Jones's trial was held in an area that's less than 50% white British. Could racial allegiance have played a part in the jury's decision? This is concerning because we've seen in multicultural countries like Lebanon and Syria that people align with their tribe. The British jury system is based on people having no competing tribal loyalties that they would hold above the individual. A free and fair judiciary is the bedrock of Western civilization, but it won't survive multiculturalism and tribalism. And speaking of tribal loyalties, Axel Rudakabana seems to have been motivated by anti-white hate. Rudakabana's reading material focused on the oppression of black and indigenous people by white colonial Europeans, and it was reported that he declared the need for a white genocide in Britain. He's so anti-white he could work in Western academia. I'm sure Axel's browsing history would reveal more about his motivations, but it still hasn't been released by the police because of bureaucratic hold-ups, apparently. I mean, it's amazing that they can't expedite the release of his browsing history considering his crimes, and I'm sure the delay is just because of bureaucracy and not because his browsing history is being buried because it reveals he was radicalised by the same anti-white critical race theory nonsense espoused by the British establishment. The real reason the Southport protesters were slammed so hard is that the government can see the country is about to blow, and the government is desperate to contain the tensions that threaten to tear it apart. Keir is a lawyer. He thinks he can legislate problems away. If he passes laws and sets rules, he thinks people will have to stick to them. But by ignoring the wishes of the people, he's making things profoundly worse. He thinks that a soft touch for people on the left will encourage people round to his side, but it's shredding the last threads of legitimacy that binds the government to the people. Brits have never voted for huge numbers of alien men to be dumped in their communities. They've peacefully and democratically expressed their wish for this to not happen. At every stage, British people have been called racist and ignored. Even now, as local politicians sought and were granted an injunction to stop a hotel in Epping being used to house refugees, the British government is seeking to overturn this ruling and force the community to accept people they don't want and who present a danger to their children. This isn't democracy. The demos is ignored. The elected representatives are ignored. Britain has suffered a quiet coup by authoritarian communists who are now legislating an invasion on British people who have taken the streets to oppose it. Anyway, you might be wondering why I'm wearing a hat. It's not because I've had another hair transplant or because barbers now all charge £25 minimum. I thought barber shops were all fronts for laundering Turkish drug money. Why are haircuts getting more expensive? Surely I already paid for my short back and sides when I bought my smack. No, I'm wearing this because I'm coming to CPAC Australia in a few weeks to do stand-up comedy and also to do a serious speech on Britain's slide into balkanisation and civil war. So if you're in Australia, come along to that and also sign up to my Patreon to get early access to my talk and to support me making these videos. And also, if you want to see me perform stand-up live in the UK, I'm doing shows in London with Francis Foster on September the 26th, and I'm doing a full solo show in Southampton on November the 26th, so come along to those. The details are right here. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye bye.